Ladies and gentlemen, life is not a straightforward path. It is riddled with complexities, betrayals, and manipulations. People will play games with you. Psychological games, emotional games, power games, emotional games, power games. Some do it out of insecurity, others out of malice. And if you don't recognize it, if you don't learn to respond effectively, you become their pawn instead of your own master. So what do you do when someone plays games with you? Do you retreat? Do you let them dictate your reality? Absolutely not. You stand your ground. You sharpen your mind. You develop the kind of resilience that makes manipulation futile, because the world isn't just about being kind. It's about being strong enough to ensure that kindness is never mistaken for weakness. And today I'm going to show you exactly how to handle those who try to undermine you, twist your words, or pull you into their web of deception. Because if you don't take control, someone else will. And that, my friends, is not a game you want to lose. Recognizing the game is the first and most crucial step in handling those who attempt to manipulate, deceive, or control you. People who play games often do so subtly, concealing their true intentions behind charm, logic, or even false kindness. They create an illusion where their actions seem justified, where their manipulations are disguised as concern, humor, or simple misunderstandings. If you don't develop the ability to recognize these patterns, you will constantly find yourself entangled in conflicts that drain your energy and leave you questioning your own reality. These games can take many forms. Some people will use guilt as a weapon, making you feel responsible for their emotions, subtly implying that their suffering is a direct result of your actions or inactions or inaction. Others will employ passive aggression, refusing to communicate directly but making their displeasure known through sarcastic remarks, silent treatment, or calculated avoidance. Then there are those who thrive on confusion, deliberately misrepresenting past conversations, twisting words, and gaslighting you into believing that you are the one misunderstanding the situation. No matter how much you give, no matter how much effort you put in, they always find a way to demand more. They make you feel like you are perpetually falling short, like nothing you do is ever enough. This tactic is especially effective because it keeps you in a state of constant striving, believing that if you just adjust a little more, try a little harder, you will finally meet their expectations. But that moment never comes. The rules keep changing and the target keeps moving, ensuring that you remain trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and frustration. Another way people play games is through the use of social pressure. They manipulate not just you, but those around you, crafting narratives that put them in a favorable light while subtly painting you as the unreasonable one. They might play the victim, making others believe that they are being mistreated, even when they are the ones engineering the conflict. This creates a scenario where you are not only defending yourself against one person, but against an entire social framework that has been influenced by their version of events. Some individuals use charm and flattery as a tool for control. They make you feel special, understood, and appreciated, only to withdraw that validation when it suits their agenda. This intermittent reinforcement, where approval and affection are given and taken away unpredictably, creates a deep psychological grip, making you crave their approval even more. It's a tactic often used by narcissists and manipulators who understand that keeping someone emotionally off balance gives them power. One of the more insidious tactics involves creating false dilemmas, where they make you believe you only have two options, both of which serve their interests. They present situations in black and white terms, forcing you into a corner where you feel pressured to choose a lesser evil, never realizing that there were other alternatives all along. This form of manipulation is particularly effective in workplaces, relationships, and social circles, where fear of conflict or rejection makes people accept unfavorable choices without question. Recognizing these games requires a deep level of self-awareness. You must be able to step back from interactions and analyze them without being clouded by emotion. Pay attention to patterns rather than isolated incidents. If someone repeatedly makes you feel confused, guilty, or inadequate, it is not a coincidence. It is a strategy. Fikey. Words alone are not enough to determine intent. You must look at actions, consistency, and the overall impact of their behavior. Understanding the mechanics of manipulation does not mean becoming paranoid or assuming malice in every interaction. It means sharpening your ability to see reality as it is, not as someone else wants you to believe it is. It requires cultivating a mindset that is both skeptical and discerning, where you trust your instincts but verify facts. The more attuned you become to these tactics, the less susceptible you are to being played, and the more power you regain over your own life. Setting clear boundaries is essential when dealing with people who play games, manipulate, or attempt to control your emotions. Boundaries are not about being rude, aggressive, or shutting people out. They are about defining what is and isn't acceptable in your interactions. They serve as an invisible force field that protects your time, energy, and mental well-being from those who seek to exploit them. Without boundaries, you become a passive participant in someone else's game, constantly reacting instead of taking control of your own reality. People who play games often test boundaries in subtle ways, pushing a little further each time to see how much they can get away with. It may start with small invasions, interrupting you when you speak, making jokes at your expense, or disregarding your preferences. If left unchallenged, these behaviors escalate, and before you realize it, you are accommodating more than you should, allowing others to dictate how you feel, what you do, and how you react. The moment you recognize these patterns, you must establish and enforce limits, making it clear that certain behaviors are not acceptable. One of the most effective ways to set boundaries is through direct and assertive communication. This does not mean being aggressive or confrontational, but rather speaking with clarity and confidence. When someone disrespects your space, time, or emotions, you must be able to say no without guilt, without over-explaining, and without feeling the need to justify yourself. Many people struggle with this because they fear disappointing others, being seen as selfish, or causing conflict. However, failing to set boundaries does not prevent conflict. Conflict simply internalizes it, leading to frustration, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. Boundaries should be firm but flexible. They should adapt to different situations while maintaining a core principle: respect. If someone constantly interrupts you, you can say, "I need to finish my thought," before you respond. If someone pressures you into doing something you're uncomfortable with, you can say, "I appreciate your perspective, but this isn't something I'm willing to do." If someone oversteps in a way that makes you uncomfortable, you can say, "That doesn't work for me, and I need you to respect that." The key is to deliver these statements with certainty without opening the door for negotiation. People who play games will often react negatively when you set boundaries because it disrupts their ability to control or manipulate you. They may act offended, guilt trip you, or accuse you of being difficult. This reaction is a clear sign that your boundaries were necessary in the first place. Those who respect you will acknowledge and adjust their behavior, while those who seek to manipulate you will test your limits further. Recognizing this response is crucial, as it reveals who genuinely values your well-being and who simply values what they can get from you. Maintaining boundaries require consistency. If you set a boundary once but fail to uphold it when challenged, you send the message that your limits are negotiable. This emboldens manipulators to keep pushing until you cave. The moment you enforce a boundary, you must commit to it fully, even if it leads to discomfort or tension. Over time, people will learn that you are not easily swayed, and they will either respect your limits or move on to someone more susceptible to their tactics. The biggest challenge in setting boundaries is overcoming the internal resistance that tells you saying no is selfish, rude, or unnecessary. Many people have been conditioned to believe that prioritizing their needs is a sign of arrogance, or insensitivity. This conditioning is exactly what manipulators exploit, knowing that as long as you fear upsetting others, you will continue to compromise yourself. The truth is, boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about taking responsibility for your own well-being. They ensure that your kindness is not mistaken for weakness, that your empathy is not exploited, and that your time and energy are spent on relationships and interactions that uplift rather than drain you. Staying emotionally composed is one of the most powerful ways to handle people who play games with you. When someone tries to manipulate, provoke, or control you, their greatest weapon is your emotional reaction. The moment you allow them to dictate how you feel, you give them the upper hand. People who engage in mind games thrive on your frustration, your anger, or your need to defend yourself. They want to pull you into an emotional battlefield where logic and clarity are replaced by impulsive reactions. The ability to remain calm under pressure is what separates those who get played from those who take control. Emotional composure begins with self-awareness. You need to recognize the triggers that make you react instinctively instead of thoughtfully. Manipulative people often study your responses, learning what buttons to push to get the reaction they want. They might use passive-aggressive comments, subtle insults, or sudden shifts in attitude to throw you off balance. If you respond immediately with frustration or defensiveness, you confirm to them that their tactics are working. However, if you take a step back, slow your breathing, and process the situation logically, you strip them of their ability to control the interaction. Detachment is a critical skill when dealing with emotional manipulation. This does not mean becoming cold or unfeeling, but rather learning to observe interactions without being consumed by them. When someone tries to provoke you, visualize yourself as a third party, watching the situation unfold. Instead of reacting instantly, ask yourself, what is this person trying to achieve by saying this? This mental shift allows you to see the game for what it is, rather than getting lost in the emotions of the moment. The less reactive you are, the more control you have over the situation. People who play games often rely on creating urgency, making you feel like you need to respond immediately. They may pressure you into making decisions on the spot, cornering you into emotional outbursts, or creating artificial crises that demand immediate attention. When you feel that pressure building, resist the urge to respond right away. Silence is a powerful tool. A pause before speaking forces the other person to sit with their own words, often making them uneasy. It also gives you time to gather your thoughts and respond in a way that serves your best interests. A key aspect of emotional composure is mastering nonverbal communication. Your tone, facial expressions, and body language should reflect control and certainty. Even if someone is trying to provoke you, maintain steady eye contact. Keep your posture relaxed and avoid defensive gestures like crossing your arms or fidgeting. If your body language remains calm, it signals confidence and makes it difficult for the other person to feel like they have gained control over you. Another essential strategy is controlling your internal dialogue. The way you speak to yourself in difficult moments influences how you react externally. Instead of thinking, this person is making me so angry, shift your mindset to, I have control over how I respond. Instead of feeling pressured into an argument, remind yourself, I don't have to engage in this. Your thoughts dictate your emotions, and by managing them effectively, you keep yourself from falling into reactive patterns that others can exploit. 2. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with manipulators is over-explaining themselves. When you feel the need to justify your actions, emotions, or boundaries excessively, you give the other person more room to twist your words and manipulate the conversation. Keeping your responses short, clear, and confident minimizes their ability to drag you into unnecessary debates. You don't owe explanations to people who are not acting in good faith. The less information you give them to work with, the less power they have over you. Practicing emotional control takes time and effort. especially if you are used to reacting impulsively. The more you expose yourself to difficult interactions while maintaining composure, the stronger this skill becomes. Over time, people who play games will realize that their usual tactics no longer work on you. They may try harder at first, escalating their behavior to regain control, but eventually they will recognize that you are not an easy target. The more consistent you are in staying emotionally composed, the less appealing you become to those who thrive on manipulation and control. Using strategic communication is essential when dealing with people who play games. Words are powerful tools, and when used with precision and intent, they can dismantle manipulation, expose dishonesty, and reinforce your boundaries. People who play games often rely on ambiguity, emotional manipulation, and psychological pressure to control situations. They twist words, misrepresent conversations, and create confusion to maintain the upper hand. Strategic communication allows you to navigate these interactions without falling into their traps, ensuring that you remain in control of your own narrative. One of the most important aspects of strategic communication is clarity. People who engage in manipulative tactics thrive on vagueness and misinterpretation. They intentionally keep things open-ended, allowing them to change their stance later or claim misunderstandings when confronted. The key to countering this is to be precise in your language. When you communicate, ensure that your words leave no room for ambiguity. If someone tries to distort what you said, you can confidently refer back to your original statement, making it difficult for them to shift the narrative. Another essential component of strategic communication is brevity. The more you speak, the more opportunities you give someone to manipulate your words. Manipulative individuals often exploit excessive explanations, extracting details they can later use against you. When dealing with such people, keep your responses short, direct, and confident. You do not owe elaborate justifications for your decisions, boundaries, or opinions. If someone questions you in an attempt to undermine your stance, a simple "that's my decision" or "I've made my choice" is often more effective than a long-winded explanation. Maintaining control over the emotional tone of a conversation is also crucial. People who play games often try to provoke emotional reactions, knowing that once you are emotionally invested, you become easier to manipulate. They may use condescending tones, passive-aggressive remarks, or outright aggression to elicit a reaction. Responding in a calm, measured tone disarms their tactics. When you refuse to engage emotionally, they lose one of their most effective tools for control. Even if they escalate their behavior in an attempt to provoke you, staying composed forces them to reconsider their approach. Framing your words in a way that shifts the power dynamic is another powerful technique. Instead of responding defensively to accusations or attempts at manipulation, reframe the conversation so that you are the one in control. If someone tries to guilt trip you, instead of justifying yourself, respond with, "I see that you feel strongly about this, but my decision stands." If they attempt to pressure you into making a choice, counter with, "I'll consider it and let you know." These statements remove the urgency and control from their hands, giving you time and space to respond on your own terms. Asking the right questions is another key strategy. Instead of reacting to manipulative statements, turn the conversation around by making the other person explain themselves. If someone makes a passive-aggressive remark, respond with, "What do you mean by that?" If they try to twist a previous conversation, ask, "Can you clarify when I said that?" These questions force them to either expose their manipulation or backtrack on their claims. When you make them accountable for their words, their ability to distort reality diminishes. One of the most effective communication tools is controlled silence. Many people feel the need to fill gaps in conversation, especially in moments of tension. Manipulative individuals use this to their advantage, pressing for responses before you have time to think, instead of rushing to reply. Embrace silence as a strategy. When someone attempts to pressure you, pausing before responding creates discomfort for them while giving you time to formulate a calculated response. Silence is not weakness. It is a demonstration of control and confidence. Understanding the difference between assertiveness and aggression is also important. Assertiveness means standing your ground while maintaining respect and composure. It involves making your position clear without attacking or belittling others. Aggression, on the other hand, often leads to unnecessary conflicts that manipulative people can use against you. The goal is not to overpower others, but to communicate in a way that leaves no room for misinterpretation, ensuring that your words reinforce your position rather than giving others leverage to twist the situation in their favor. Leveraging their tactics against them is one of the most effective ways to handle people who play games. Instead of reacting emotionally or trying to convince them to change, you can use their own strategies in a way that neutralizes their manipulation and turns the situation in your favor. The key to doing this successfully is understanding the psychology behind their behavior and then responding in a calculated and controlled manner. One of the most common manipulation tactics people use is playing the victim to gain sympathy and shift blame. When confronted with this, the worst thing you can do is try to justify yourself or engage in an emotional debate. Instead, mirror their approach by remaining neutral while subtly highlighting the inconsistencies in their narrative. If they claim you have wronged them unfairly, calmly ask, "I understand you feel that way, but can you explain specifically what I did?" This forces them to articulate their accusation without the benefit of vague emotional manipulation. Most manipulators struggle when their tactics are exposed because their power comes from controlling the narrative, not from having factual support for their claims. Another effective way to turn their tactics against them is through strategic agreement. Now, this does not mean conceding to their manipulations, but rather using their own words to box them into a logical corner. For example, if someone frequently criticizes you in subtle, passive-aggressive ways, respond with something like, "You seem to have a lot of strong opinions about how I should handle this. I appreciate the feedback. You share what makes you such an expert on this?" This approach forces them to either admit they are overstepping or awkwardly justify their constant criticism. Manipulative people prefer to keep interactions one-sided, so when you put them in a position where they have to explain themselves, they often retreat. Deflection is another powerful tool when dealing with game players. Many manipulators use projection, accusing you of behaviors that they themselves are guilty of. If they accuse you of being inconsiderate, selfish, or dishonest, instead of defending yourself, redirect the focus back onto them. Respond with, "That's interesting. What makes you think that?" Or, "Can you give me an example of when I did that?" This forces them to either provide evidence, which they usually lack, or back down from their attempt to shift blame onto. The more you make them accountable for their own accusations, the less effective their tactics become. Silence is another technique that can be used to turn their strategies against. Manipulators often rely on provoking an immediate response because it gives them the opportunity to control the conversation. By refusing to engage instantly, you disrupt their rhythm and force them to sit with their own words. If they say something designed to bait you, simply pause, look at them, and wait. The discomfort created by silence often leads them to over-explain or even retract their statement. This works particularly well with those who try to dominate conversations through intimidation or aggressive speech patterns. One of the most advanced ways to turn their tactics against them is to mirror their behavior in a way that exposes its absurdity. If someone consistently interrupts you, start interrupting them in the same way. If they use sarcasm as a weapon, respond with an exaggerated version of their tone. This approach works because manipulators often lack self-awareness when it comes to their own behaviors. When they see their tactics reflected back at them, they either become uncomfortable or realize that they are losing control of the interaction. A key element of leveraging their tactics is remaining emotionally detached. The moment you react emotionally, you give them power. Instead, view their manipulation as a predictable script that you are learning to rewrite. Every time they attempt to play a game with you, see it as an opportunity to practice your control. The more composed and strategic you remain, the more ineffective their games become. Eventually, they will recognize that you are not an easy target, and they will either adjust their behavior or move on in search of someone more susceptible to their tactics. Walking away when necessary is one of the most powerful tools you have when dealing with people who play games. Not every battle needs to be fought, and not every person deserves your time, energy, or attention. Some people thrive on manipulation, drama, and power struggles, and no amount of reasoning, boundary setting, or strategic communication will change them. The moment you recognize that someone is committed to playing games rather than engaging in a genuine, respectful interaction, you must be willing to disengage completely. The ability to walk away is not a sign of weakness or avoidance. It is an assertion of self-respect and an acknowledgement that not every situation is worth your involvement. People who play games rely on your emotional investment. They want you to care, to be affected, to react in ways that give them a sense of control over you. When you show them that their games have no impact on you, you take away their power. Walking away is the ultimate statement that you refuse to participate in a dynamic that does not serve you. It sends a clear message that you value your peace of mind more than their attempts to manipulate you. This is often the last thing they expect because they assume you will stay engaged, trying to prove a point, seek closure, or change their behavior. The fear of walking away often stems from the need for validation. Many people struggle with the idea of leaving a situation unresolved, especially when they feel they have been wronged. There's a natural urge to defend oneself, to clarify misunderstandings, to ensure that the other person understands their mistakes. But manipulators do not play by the same rules. They are not seeking truth or fairness. They are seeking control. Engaging with them only prolongs the cycle and drains your emotional energy. The more you argue, explain, or try to make them see your perspective, the more you reinforce their belief that they still have influence over you. Walking away does not always mean cutting someone off completely, although in some cases that is the best option. It can also mean mentally and emotionally disengaging from their tactics. You may still have to interact with them in professional settings, social circles, or family gatherings, but you do not have to play their game. You can choose to give them nothing. No reaction, no frustration, no emotional investment. Respond with neutrality, keep interactions minimal, and refuse to be drawn into their drama. Over time, they will see that their usual tactics no longer work on you, and they will either adjust their behavior or seek someone else to manipulate. One of the biggest challenges in walking away is overcoming guilt. Manipulators are skilled at making you feel like you are the unreasonable one for stepping back. They may frame you as selfish, uncaring, or overly sensitive. They may attempt to guilt trip you into staying engaged by bringing up past experiences, playing the victim, or accusing you of abandoning them. This is all part of their strategy to keep you involved. Recognizing this pattern allows you to detach from the emotional hooks they try to place in you. You're not responsible for their feelings, their reactions, or their inability to respect boundaries. Your priority is your own well-being. And if removing yourself from a toxic dynamic is what it takes to preserve your peace, then that is exactly what you should do. The moment you walk away from someone who plays games, you reclaim your power. You stop allowing them to dictate your emotions, your responses, and your decisions. Instead of being reactive, you become proactive in choosing the relationships and interactions that align with your values. It is not about winning or losing. It is about refusing to participate in a game that was never meant to be fair in the first place. When you recognize that some battles are not worth fighting and some people are not worth engaging with, you free yourself from unnecessary stress and step into a position of true strength